Millions of Americans are potentially facing eviction. They haven't paid their bills, and the government doesn't seem like they're going to push out some more money to them. This could be extended. The money might actually be given out, but as of this moment, that isn't happening. The Fed has been pushing for more government stimulus, citing their inability to actually help the public, but who knows what they've got up their sleeve. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today, we're going to talk about the potential for millions of Americans to be evicted. There is a big issue today going on when individuals cannot pay their bills, and in fact, many cannot afford to buy food. I'll show you the data surrounding that. I've got information that essentially just highlights the problems that we have in the economy. You've got other issues going on in the stock market, and clearly it is being boosted by the central bank activity. The central banks, of course, in addition to the Federal Reserve, I'm going to give you all the data you need around that. And it has helped people like Elon Musk, whose wealth has increased by over $100 billion in 2020 alone. At the same time, you've got millions of people that without the government's help today will be living on the streets, would be unable to eat. There are 44 million people in the United States on food stamps. There are millions of people who are literally subsisting because of the taxpayer money, and that is not a good sign when you have such a grand disparity. And I've got one major surprise if you haven't seen it already. I know a couple comments came through telling me about it. Don't worry, I will talk about this today. It's a big one. Let's get into it right away. Millions of Americans expect to face eviction by the end of this year. Of course, this could be a big issue that would be a problem for these millions, but also for the economy as a whole, because if suddenly they're evicted, they're not going to have all of the different aspects here when they're not spending money at the corner store, they're not going to the big box store, they're not going to the restaurants, and so on. If they are unable to pay their bills, this is going to be an issue, and it looks like that's what's already happening today. About 5.8 million adults say that they are somewhat to very likely to face eviction or foreclosure in the next 2 months. And that was as of November 9th. So essentially just saying by the end of the year, this is where the problems lie. That accounts for a third of the 17.8 million adults in households that are behind on rent or mortgage payments. So imagine how many people think that they'll be able to pay this bill, think that they'll be able to get everything in order, but will not be able to. And that just shows you that these statistics will never be able to add up to what actually happens. But at least we know that there are millions of people who are in this scenario. This is unfortunately not going to be resolved by simply handing out another $1,200 paycheck or giving people a few $100s a month and another couple hundred on top of that, depending on what gets approved in what area and so on. This is unfortunately something that needs a strong economy to resolve itself. But without that economy being there, it's not looking good. This is the chart that corresponds to that information. It comes from the Census Bureau. The percentage of adults living in households not current on their rent or mortgage where eviction or foreclosure in the next 2 months is either very likely or somewhat likely. And these areas here, the darker red, or I should say the brighter red, is where the situation is the worst. But you look around, there's quite a bit of red, that's for sure. 1 in 4 Rhode Islanders can't meet basic food needs, Food Bank's annual report says. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but it wouldn't surprise me. When you have 44 million people, like I said, 44 million people right now that are actually requiring the government to eat through food stamps, this tells you that there is a significant problem. And that was before 2020. Before this crisis began, you already had this many people who subsist because of the government giving them these EBT cards. And that tells you that there is a serious problem underlying the economy to begin with. Look, this is never going to show up in the stats accurately. It's something that they can always hide using one program or another, but it just gives you an idea of what's been happening today, where we have the grand disparity that has gone to epic proportions. Right now, people have been plunged into food insecurity at a rate not seen since the Great Depression. In 2019, the number reporting food insecurity was 9.1%. This year, 25% say they were unable to provide enough food for themselves and their families. I believe this article was sent to me by a subscriber. More young workers in the UK lost their jobs during the summer of 2020 than in all of 2019. It just shows you that it's affecting so many different people for so many different reasons, and it's all over the world. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Elon Musk overtakes Bill Gates to grab the world's second richest ranking. He has earned over $100 billion this year alone. The stock, if you haven't seen it, look, I can draw you exactly what it looked like. Here we go. That's it. This is what the stock looks like right now. It is going straight up. No bad news has any impact. There's no impact on this stock whatsoever. They could produce 0 cars from now on, and it doesn't matter. The stock is just going up. It's ridiculous. It's going into all of these different avenues, and nobody ever could make a prediction high enough. They just keep raising the bar, and it doesn't matter because people continue to buy into it. Investors are buying in, hedge funds are buying in, retail's buying in. Everybody is piling into this stock right now, and as a result, Elon Musk's net worth has accelerated. Look, I think it was last year or something, he was actually saying the stock price is too high, Elon Musk himself, and now it has like many multiples beyond where it was. And it's just shocking to see how much speculation is taking place in the market today. At the same time, everybody, 99.99% of people are denying that it's going on. And I wonder why. Well, let's talk about the central banks. This is the most important factor, and I talk about it on almost every single one of my videos because this is the most important factor. I will repeat it over and over again. G4, Central Bank Balance Sheet Forecast, Morgan Stanley, and their predictions for what they believe. This is just 4 central banks believing that we will have a total of nearly $30 trillion between these 4. Unbelievable. $12.8 trillion increase, or 29% of the GDP. It is so extreme. This is where we were at December 2019, 16.5 trillion, essentially doubling from that point. The end of last year, and over the course of a couple years from now, the central bank balance sheets will double. And then if you add on all the other central banks, it is just shocking to say the least. I actually think that, they are basically saying that it's going to taper off. I have a different opinion about that, but that's just my opinion. So let's move on. Morgan Stanley projections for G10 central bank policy rate changes in 2021. I wanted to make something very clear right here. We're looking at the left-hand side. This is the 0 line. Look where we are. It's just showing you potentially that this could be negatives that all across the board. We will see where they end up. Many are at that 0 bound. This is the USD, but others falling below that line. And where do they expect it to be? Around this line, but none of them in the positive. Everyone is at 0% or lower. And that just shows you how weak these central banks are, how backed into the corner they are. At the same time, they lie to you that the economy is doing well. On the right-hand side, you are looking at the emerging markets and the central bank policy rates. Understand that despite the fact that the majority of these are in the positive territory, these are historically extremely low, and that should give you some warning, some caution about what's happening today in the financial system itself. G10 central bank expected average monthly QE pace in 2021. Nobody knows where this is going to be, but I mean, it is just so excessive today. It shows you in the local currency, the USD, depending how you want to look at this, a percentage of GDP and so on. It's extreme on any way that you look at it. It's so extreme. Average monthly QE pace in 2021 as a percentage of the GDP, 0.58% by the Federal Reserve. Think about that. Month after month after month after month. It is just growing so rapidly. I mean, you could look down here, Bank of Canada, the ECB, and so on. They are all expanding at a rate which is accelerating beyond anything that was ever imagined. Right hand side, G10 central bank expected average monthly QE pace in 2021 in US dollars, and it just gives you an idea of where they're at. You can see the Federal Reserve printing up $120 billion minimum per month, ECB around the same level as well. Again, the central banks as a percentage of the central bank balance sheet, monthly QE pace. Let's see where this goes. I don't want to just speculate and read through all of these and tell you what I think about all of them. You could see it for yourself. You could pause the video or look at the previous chart. It's all contained in there. And now for the fantastic news. That's right, isn't she lovely? Janet Yellen apparently will be back in action. Well, we'll see if this actually does come true. But you didn't think that she left for too long, did you? Well, apparently, she's coming back as the Treasury Secretary. A few days ago, I had told you that there was speculation about that. It looks like becoming actually official soon enough. Well, what does this mean? Ultimately, the Fed has more control than ever before. I've been saying this for years, and it's looking more and more true every day. They have skirted around any very minor restrictions that were put on them. They've been doing things that they're actually legally not allowed to do. Some people had thought it was actually the opposite and that the government was taking over the Fed, but my goodness, it's completely the opposite. Turning over to Canada really quickly, Bank of Canada deputy downplays risks of consumer default wave. Of course, they'll never admit it. Everything is totally fine in Canada. It's all igloos and sunshine. But when you actually look at it, the risk is just so apparent. It's so obvious, and we're supposed to just turn the other way. I'm not so sure about that. To this point, we do not see signs that home prices are rising due to speculation like we saw in the Greater Toronto and Vancouver areas a few years ago. At the same time, he cautioned about the need to be vigilant in certain segments of the markets, such as condos. Now, condos have come down. So if anything, they've taken a little bit of a breather. Instead, you look at what's happening with detached homes, and it's like Elon Musk's wealth. It is going up in a straight line. It's ridiculous though, because people are taking mortgages that they can't afford. And you hear from people, I've heard from multiple people, look, if you want the paperwork can be made for you. That's not an issue. You can get the documents to be simply, just a little edited. Let's just say this is your paperwork here, and you put your income. Okay, my income is, I don't know, let's just make up a number here, $10,000. Well, we can add a zero on there. That's not a big deal. We can make that happen. This goes on all the time. And if you don't believe it, my goodness, you've got to wake up. That's all for this video. If you found that informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you are supporting me. I want to thank you for that. If you want to learn how to sell stuff online, e-commerce, it is such a huge skill right now. And so many people are paying $1,000 plus to learn about it. And I have done it because I'm crazy. I've done it for free. All you got to do is go to the AmazonGPS.com. If you want to know about the financial system and you're old school and you actually read books, my goodness, could you believe it? Well, take a look at my 2 books because they will explain everything you need, and even you might want to hand these books out to friends and family to help them out. Well, you can get them, the link in the description if you want the audiobook instead, themoneygps.com. But wait a second, you can't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere until you watch this video. So much data that in here that corresponds to what you've just seen. Click it, I'll see you there.